Kind of like wait until you see the whites of their eyes.
Dave, the governor still can't be reached. He's in his car someplace on his way to the airport.
What if the deadliest invasion in history didn't come from slimy, bug-eyed creatures, but from silent, crystalline rocks? In 1957, Universal Pictures unleashed one of its strangest and most original sci-fi experiments, the Monolith Monsters. It was a film that turned the quiet, dusty desert into a ticking time bomb, a nightmare where every single drop of rain could awaken a marching army of black, stone crystals. In this story, there were no monsters to shoot, no alien leaders to reason with. There was just an unstoppable, unthinking, and utterly relentless geological force that grew taller and more menacing with every passing hour. But the story of the Monolith Monsters is more than just a forgotten B-movie. It was a film born from recycled film reels, uncredited musical geniuses, and a deep-seated Cold War paranoia that seeped into every single scene. Tonight, we are digging deep into the archives to uncover the hidden secrets of this unique and terrifying cult classic. These are 16 weird, unbelievable, and shocking facts about the Monolith Monsters, the film that made the science of geology the stuff of nightmares. The legendary Jack Arnold was almost the director before the Monolith Monsters ever began its slow, creeping petrification of American audiences. It was originally meant to be another classic from the undisputed king of 1950s science fiction, Jack Arnold. Universal had initially tapped the brilliant director behind certified masterpieces like Creature from the Black Lagoon, and it came from outer space to both produce and direct the film, back when it was under its early working title, Monolith. Arnold had already proven himself a master of turning complex scientific ideas into thrilling, atmospheric spectacle, and this strange, high-concept story of killer, self-replicating crystals was right up his creative alley. But fate and the demands of the studio system had other plans. Just as pre-production was ramping up, Arnold was pulled away by the studio to work on a more prestigious and expensive A-list drama, The Tattered Dress. This left the Monolith project without a director. The job was then given to John Sherwood, a reliable and experienced filmmaker who was best known at Universal as a second-unit director, the man who handled the action sequences and location shots for bigger productions. It was a massive and exciting leap for Sherwood, a chance to finally direct his own feature. But tragically, it would also be his last film. He passed away from an illness shortly after the film's release, giving the Monolith Monsters an eerie and somber sense of finality, both on the screen and off. A sci-fi legend almost made it. But destiny handed this strange and memorable film to a director who would never get the chance to make another. A hidden connection to the legendary Henry Mancini. If you thought the movie's eerie, sophisticated, and surprisingly elegant opening theme sounded a little too good for a low-budget B-movie, you'd be absolutely right. The score, which is officially credited to the studio composer, Irving Gertz, quietly and liberally borrowed from Universal's extensive in-house music library, a common cost-saving practice at the time. And in that library, an uncredited and then unknown young composer named Henry Mancini was just cutting his teeth, writing anonymous musical cues for the studio's various productions. A few of his early uncredited compositions, along with dramatic cues written by his colleague Hermann Stein, were skillfully stitched into the soundtrack of the Monolith Monsters to save the production both time and money. That haunting 21-second main title cue that you hear as the credits roll, the one that sets the entire mysterious tone. It's not original to this film at all. It's actually a tracked piece of music taken directly from another Universal creature feature, The Deadly Mantis, which was also released in 1957. The hidden fingerprints of the great Henry Mancini are buried deep in this soundtrack, composed long before he would achieve global fame with his iconic scores for The Pink, Panther, and Moon River. In other words, One of Hollywood's smoothest and most celebrated composers got his start making killer rocks sound terrifying. The uncredited voice of God sets the eerie tone. Before a single actor appears on screen, a deep, thunderous, and authoritative voice warns us about the immense and terrifying power of nature gone mad. And that iconic, uncredited voice belonged to none other than the legendary voice actor, Paul Frees. Though his name is nowhere in the credits, Frees was one of the most recognizable and prolific voices in the history of American entertainment. He was the go-to voice of God for countless movie trailers, a favorite narrator of Walt Disney himself, and the man behind iconic cartoon characters like Boris Badenov in Rocky and Bullwinkle. In the Monolith Monsters, Freeze's powerful narration in the opening minutes transforms what could have been a slow and dry geological thriller into something that sounds almost biblical and apocalyptic. His deep, serious, and dramatic delivery makes the scientific premise sound like a prophecy, as if the planet itself is angry and about to unleash its wrath. That powerful, disembodied voice tells you that something ancient and terrible is coming, long before the story even begins. Without Paul Frees's uncredited but crucial contribution, those opening minutes simply wouldn't sound like the beginning of the end of the world. Universal's special effects genius, Clifford Stein, handled the visuals. When audiences in 1957 saw entire mountains of black, crystalline rocks seemingly growing out of the desert floor, they weren't looking at cheap or clumsy props. They were witnessing the brilliant and meticulous work of Clifford Stein, one of Universal's quietest and most effective visual magicians. Stein had already dazzled audiences with his groundbreaking effects work on other Universal classics, like It Came from Outer Space and This Island Earth. And for this film, he and his team built a series of incredibly detailed miniature desert landscapes that could be made to crumble, shatter, and seemingly grow like living, breathing creatures. He used a variety of clever and now almost lost techniques, including forced perspective to make the miniatures look massive, and skillfully executed matte shots to seamlessly blend the miniatures with the real desert footage. He also filmed the handcrafted miniature rock towers in slow motion as they were pushed up from below the set, giving them the powerful illusion of unstoppable and menacing growth. In some shots, he even combined real billowing dust clouds with the miniature rockfalls to make the on-screen destruction feel massive and completely real. The trick of his work wasn't just visual, it was emotional. The rocks didn't move or roar like traditional monsters. They spread with a silent, cold, and almost disease-like efficiency. It was pure, terrifying science turned into visual spectacle. Filming took place in the alien landscape of Lone Pine, California, to give the film the authentic and convincing illusion of an alien and desolate wasteland. The production crew didn't have to travel to another planet. They just had to travel to Lone Pine, California, tucked between the majestic Sierra Nevada mountains and the vast, unforgiving Mojave Desert. The region's strange, twisted, and ancient granite rock formations and its wide, empty skies had already been immortalized in countless classic Hollywood westerns. But in the Monolith Monsters, this familiar landscape was transformed into something truly otherworldly. Under the harsh and unforgiving desert sun, those ancient rocks shimmered and baked, looking exactly like the barren and hostile surface of another world. The on-location shoot was notoriously difficult. Dust storms and unpredictable high-speed winds constantly fought the production, coating the delicate cameras and props with a fine layer of sand. But those same brutal and authentic conditions made every single shot look completely genuine. The landscape in the film feels eerie, vast, and deeply, profoundly lonely. It became a silent and menacing character in its own right, perfectly amplifying the film's central message. Nature doesn't need aliens or bug-eyed monsters to destroy us. It is by itself a powerful and terrifying force. Universal's famous Backlot filled in for the doomed town scenes, when the story of the film moves from the desolate desert to the small, doomed town of San Angelo. the production didn't have to build anything new. In a classic move of studio efficiency, they simply used Universal's own famous courthouse square set on the studio backlot, the very same iconic set that would later become the town of Hill Valley in the 1985 classic Back to the Future. In 1957, however, this familiar square stood in for a quintessential small town, USA, sitting unknowingly on the very edge of a geological disaster. The crew dressed up the existing storefronts, dusted everything with a layer of fake desert sand to match the location footage, and shot the scenes from low. Dramatic angles to make the approaching monoliths seem impossibly and terrifyingly huge. The very same streets where Marty McFly would one day ride a skateboard and race against time were once the site of a silent and creeping geological apocalypse. Universal's clever and cost-effective reuse of this iconic set allowed them to stretch their modest budget while giving audiences a familiar and comforting sense of classic Americana right before the chaos and destruction. The opening meteor crash footage was not new, it was recycled. That spectacular and memorable opening meteor sequence, the fiery streak across the night sky that sets the entire nightmare in motion, wasn't filmed for the Monolith Monsters at all. In a brilliant and almost seamless act of cinematic recycling, Universal simply reused the exact same meteor crash footage from another Jack Arnold sci-fi classic that they had produced just a few years earlier. 1953's It Came from Outer Space. It was a clever and incredibly cost-effective way to save thousands of dollars on complex and dangerous special effects, while still providing the film with the kind of cosmic, catastrophic energy that audiences of the era loved. The reuse of the footage was so seamless that most viewers in the 1950s, and even many today, never noticed. The use of the same desert sky, the same iconic streak of fire, and the same camera angles made it feel like it was a part of the same cinematic universe, long before the idea of shared universes even existed. In a strange and almost poetic way, it's as if the two films are secretly connected, with one meteor crash leading to one kind of alien menace, and this one leading to another, born from silent stone instead of strange space creatures. Universal didn't just recycle film, they recycled fear. The story's true, unconventional monster is Geology, not an alien. In a decade that was completely and utterly obsessed with flying saucers, bug-eyed invaders, and slimy mutant bugs, the Monolith Monsters dared to do something completely different and far stranger. It made the Earth itself, and the very laws of chemistry, the enemy. In this film, there are no tentacled creatures, no snarling monsters, and no little green men. The monster of the title is a cold, unthinking, and relentless geological chain reaction. The alien rocks are shown to feed on silicon, the most common element in the Earth's crust, literally draining it from the world around them, and from the humans they touch. Even the victims in the film don't die in a traditional, violent way. They are slowly turned to stone, becoming lifeless, petrified statues, a part of the very thing that destroyed them. This brilliant and original twist made the film stand out in a very crowded sci-fi landscape. The horror in this story didn't come from outer space. It came from a chemistry textbook. It was an invisible and silent threat that couldn't be reasoned with, couldn't be shot, and couldn't be destroyed by conventional force. It was science fiction stripped of all emotion, leaving only cold, hard logic and sheer mounting panic. The bizarre, real-life, living stones of Romania. As bizarre and fantastical as the premise of the Monolith Monsters seems, it may have been inspired by a real and very strange geological phenomenon that actually exists on Earth, the Trovants of Romania. These mysterious and unique stones, found in a specific region of the country, appear to grow and even multiply after a heavy rain. They can swell in size over time and even sprout smaller nodules on their surface that eventually break off, almost resembling a form of offspring. Scientists explain this strange phenomenon as a natural chemical reaction between the sandstone and the mineral-rich rainwater, which causes the outer layer to cement and expand. But for centuries, local folklore has held that the stones were, in fact, alive. The resemblance to the film's alien water-activated crystals is uncanny and almost unbelievable. Both appear to grow and self-replicate when they come into contact with moisture, and both blur the very line between inanimate geology and living organisms. Whether or not the filmmakers knew about the Romanian Trovants, the strange coincidence gives the movie's outlandish premise an eerie and unsettling plausibility. It's as if nature itself had already written the terrifying script. A script born from the real-life fear of the unknown. The creative spark for the Monolith Monsters didn't come from a laboratory or a studio brainstorm session. It came directly from the sky. In the mid-1950s, a series of sensational reports about a blazing, unidentified meteor streaking over the California desert filled the local newspapers. The writers of the film's original story, Jack Arnold and Robert M. Fresco, seized on this real-life event and the public's fascination with it. They began to imagine what might happen if that real meteor had carried something far stranger and far more dangerous than simple space dust. Within weeks, Universal had heard their pitch and ordered a full script. The real-life incident in the sky might have only lasted for a few seconds, but it was enough to ignite a very 1950s kind of public panic, a deep-seated fear of the unknown, wrapped in the language of scientific possibility. Arnold and Fresco brilliantly turned that single flash of light into a full-blown and powerful allegory about mankind's complete helplessness in the face of cosmic forces it cannot possibly understand. The result was a story that perfectly blended the atomic age anxiety of the time with a sense of small-town vulnerability, giving birth to one of sci-fi's most original and unsettling doomsday scenarios. A chilling Cold War metaphor, hiding in plain sight beneath all the scientific jargon and the scenes of stone-crushing chaos. The Monolith Monsters plays like a quiet and deeply unsettling Cold War warning, the multiplying, advancing black rocks, mindless, unstoppable, and spreading without end, perfectly mirrored America's pervasive and deep-seated fear of communism, radiation, and invisible contamination. Many film historians have pointed out that the story's unique tension doesn't come from a single identifiable villain, but from the very idea of contagion itself. Each crystal shard that breaks off and begins to grow somewhere else feels like a powerful and terrifying stand-in for the spread of an opposing ideology, faceless, emotionless, and seemingly impossible to contain once it has taken root. The town's desperate and almost futile attempt to stop the growing menace with science, dynamite, and finally, salt, mirrors the era's obsession with trying to control invisible and existential threats. From nuclear fallout to foreign propaganda, the film's real and subtle message is a chilling one. Fear doesn't always have a face. Sometimes it just silently and relentlessly multiplies until it consumes everything. Actor Grant Williams Ryuses his own scientist, set from another classic. If the laboratory set in, the Monolith Monsters look strangely familiar to you. That's because it literally appeared in another Universal sci-fi classic that was released in the very same year. The masterpiece, The Incredible Shrinking Man. Both films starred the actor Grant Williams as a man grappling with a bizarre scientific crisis. And both films, to save money, used the exact same set for the California Medical Research Institute. Universal simply redressed the walls, swapped out a few key props, and shot the set from new and different angles. It was a textbook 1950s studio move, a brilliant piece of efficiency that was disguised as continuity. But the strange coincidence makes Grant Williams's back-to-back sci-fi roles feel oddly and thematically connected. In one film, he's a geologist battling living, growing crystals that are becoming massive. In the other, he's a man fighting the infinite void of atomic shrinkage, becoming infinitesimally small. Both stories pit a lone, intelligent human against overwhelming natural forces that are beyond his comprehension. It's almost as if Grant Williams never left the lab. The terrifying experiment just kept changing around him. The film was released as a bizarre double feature. When the Monolith Monsters hit theaters in 1957, it didn't come alone. In a classic move from the golden age of the double feature, it shared the screen with another, very different Universal curiosity, a pulpy adventure film called Love Slaves of the Amazon. This bizarre pairing was typical for the era's drive-in and matinee circuits, where studios would often package two completely different films together for the price of one, frequently combining wild and clashing genres to lure in curious crowds. Imagine the strange cinematic whiplash for audiences at the time. First, you're watching a grim and serious story about men being turned to stone by alien crystals in the California desert. And then, just minutes later, you're transported to the jungles of South America, surrounded by a lost tribe of warrior women. It was a programming choice that had less to do with storytelling cohesion and more to do with delivering two massive doses of pure escapism before the popcorn ran out. Audiences came for the spectacle, and Universal made sure they left feeling like they'd lived through two entirely different and equally strange worlds in one single, memorable sitting. A shoestring B-movie that accidentally became a cult classic with its modest budget, its relatively short runtime, and its high concept but low action premise. The Monolith Monsters was never meant to shake the world. Yet, over the decades, it has quietly earned a permanent and respected place in the annals of science fiction history. Shot quickly and cheaply, the film was forced to rely on pure creativity instead of cash. The brilliant miniature sets, the cleverly recycled meteor footage, and a smart script that turned a geological curiosity into a cosmic terror, all combined to create something special. What began as a simple B-movie filler designed to play on the bottom half of a double bill has somehow aged into one of Universal's most imaginative and unique post-atomic tales. Over the years, critics and a growing legion of fans have rediscovered it, hailing it as a kind of minimalist masterpiece of suspense. Its slow, creeping, and almost silent sense of doom felt completely different from the loud, roaring creature features of the time. The rocks didn't roar or scream. They just advanced, one silent and inevitable collapse at a time. That eerie and intelligent restraint is what gave the film a timeless and powerful dread that modern viewers still feel today. The film's eerie. Footage resurfaced, decades later, in another classic long after. The Monolith Monsters had crumbled into cult status. Its eerie and unforgettable visuals found a strange and unexpected new life in the background of other, more famous movies. Most notably, a brief clip from the film appears, playing on a television, in the background of John Carpenter's 1988 sci-fi classic, They Live. It's a sly and clever nod from one master of science fiction paranoia to another. Carpenter, a known and devoted fan of 1950s horror and sci-fi, often used clips from old monster flicks inside his own films as fun Easter eggs for sharp-eyed viewers. In this case, the choice was particularly fitting. Both films, in their own unique ways, explore the terrifying idea of invisible invasions that are quietly and systematically consuming humanity from within. One through subliminal television signals, the other through silent, spreading stone. The thematic echo between the two films turns that old, recycled meteor footage into a strange and powerful warning, a broadcast from the past, still trying to tell us that the invasion has already begun. Its unique concept inspired modern sci-fi, including major video games, the strange and original idea of a self-replicating, world-consuming mineral growth didn't end with the final frame of the Monolith Monsters. Decades later, the creators of the massively popular real-time strategy video game series, Command & Conquer, have cited the film as a direct and major inspiration for the mysterious and deadly green crystal known as Tiberium in their game's universe. Tiberium, like the monoliths, is an alien substance that spreads uncontrollably across the landscape, consuming everything in its path and transforming the very Earth itself. It's the exact same brilliant concept, reborn in a new, digital form. Nature itself mutating into a weapon that is both beautiful and terrifyingly deadly at the same time. That powerful influence stretches beyond the world of gaming. You can spot the thematic echoes of the monoliths in later films like the 1988 remake of The Blob, the 2018 sci-fi film Annihilation, and even in the popular series The Last of Us, where the idea of an unstoppable, all-consuming natural growth becomes a powerful and terrifying metaphor for global decay. What started as a low-budget curiosity ended up shaping an entire subgenre of slow apocalypse storytelling. Those strange black shards of rock never really stopped growing. They just evolved into pixels, spores, and lines of code. For a movie about rocks, the Monolith Monsters sure left a lasting and powerful impact. What began as a cheap desert thriller, built from recycled parts and uncredited geniuses, ended up influencing decades of science fiction. From its chilling Cold War metaphors to its surprising influence on modern video game nightmares, the film proved that true horror doesn't always need monsters with teeth and claws. Sometimes all it takes is the quiet, indifferent, and unstoppable power of nature itself, doing exactly what it was designed to do. So, which strange fact about this forgotten classic surprised you the most? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more hidden stories from behind the strange and forgotten corners of old Hollywood.